Once upon a time, when there was magic everywhere, on the edge of a great forest, there lived a man and his wife and their son Tom. The boy's parents called him Tom Thumb, because when he was born, he was no bigger than your thumb. And although he never grew very much, his parents loved him very deeply and took great pains not to step on him or mislay him. They were a very poor family, and it happened that one year they were even poorer than usual. So poor that one morning, Tom awoke earlier than his parents and found they had literally nothing to eat.
Don't worry, my parents. I know you don't want me to go into the forest alone, but I'll try and get us something to eat.
Tom was right, for if his parents had known that he was going into the forest, they certainly wouldn't have allowed him to leave the house, for he was so small that a wolf cub could have eaten him for breakfast and been hungry an hour later. Tom strode bravely into the forest.
Maybe I'll be able to find some berries and nuts for us to eat.
But there was no food to be found, and Tom forced his way farther and farther into the forest. Suddenly, a terrible storm struck, and the sky grew so dark that Tom couldn't tell his left from his right.
Let's see. I turned left twice and right thrice. Or was it slightly left and twicely right? I'm lost.
And lost he was. About as lost as a boy can be. But Tom Thumb didn't panic. He sat down under the largest tree he could find and waited for the rain to stop. And finally it did. Tom climbed the tree and looked around.
I hope I can find something that will lead me back home again.
And sure enough, far in the distance were lights of a house. Tom clambered down the tree and headed toward the house as fast as his tiny little feet would carry him.
My goodness, it isn't a house at all. It's a castle.
What can I do for you, young man?
Please, ma'am, may I have something to eat and a bed for the night? It's almost dark and I'm lost.
I'd be happy to have you for supper, but my husband would insist on having you for breakfast, I'm afraid.
I don't understand.
Don't you know my husband is an ogre? He'd pop you into his mouth as if you were a grape.
Well, couldn't you hide me somewhere, ma'am? If I stay outside, I'll certainly be eaten by wolves.
And if my husband finds you, he'll eat you.
Oh, please.
Well, I don't know. It's my husband. He can't be more than 40 leagues away. Quick, hide under the bed.
But 40 leagues? He won't be here for days.
He has magic boots that carry him 7 leagues at a stride. Hurry!
So Tom Thumb dived under the bed and made himself as small as possible. Which was very small indeed, just as the tremendous ogre entered the castle.
Wife, what do you have for my supper?
3 fat geese and a fresh-killed sheep.
Sheep. I thought I caught a tiny sniff of fresh young flesh of child.
Oh, you must have smelled Griselda. but she's been put to bed.
I know what my own daughter smells like. I tell you, I thought I caught a tiny sniff of fresh young flesh of child.
Oh!
And here he is.
Help! Put me down!
And so I shall, little man. I'll put you down. My throat!
Husband, wait. Wouldn't the fellow be more tasty roasted with a nice butterscotch sauce?
Perhaps he would. Go into the kitchen and make the sauce while I have some wine and work up an appetite.
The ogre's wife did as she was told and went into the kitchen. And the ogre put Tom on the mantelpiece so that he could look at him and think about how good he was going to taste. But the more the ogre thought about it, the hungrier and thirstier he got. So that before the sauce was more than half prepared, he'd eaten the entire sheep and drunk 10 gallons more wine than he usually did with his supper. Tom slowly climbed down from the mantelpiece and made his way across the floor as quietly as he could.
Now, if I can just get his boots off without waking him up.
Very, very gently, Tom slipped off the ogre's 7-league boots and put them on his own feet. Luckily, since they were magic boots, they fit the feet of whoever put them on. He had just gotten the boots on when he heard the footsteps of the ogre's wife.
Don't mind me, dear. I just came in to get a ruby to put in the boy's mouth. Food has to have eye appeal, you know.
As soon as the ogre's wife went back into the kitchen, Tom came out of hiding and went to the chest she had taken the ruby from. It was filled with rubies as big as apples and diamonds as big as prunes. Tom stuffed his pockets with all the jewels he could carry and ran for the door. But Tom was as smart as he was small. He knocked on the door very loudly and curled himself into a ball next to the molding.
Who's coming calling at this hour?
Goodbye, Mr. Ogre. I'll come to supper some other time.
And Tom was gone. Since he'd stolen the 7-league boots, the ogre had no hope of catching him. And within a few seconds, Tom Thumb, laden with enough diamonds and rubies to last the family a lifetime, was safely in the arms of his mother and father. I don't suppose I have to tell you this, but they all lived happily ever after.